So now we are into the World War III pay-per-view, and that took place on November 24th, 1996. We open up with a sort of dated intro to this pay-per-view, and it just feels like WCW does not care too much about this pay-per-view overall. But
I don't even like the concept of the World War III Battle Royal.
No, what we will talk about when we get there. We did one for last year, and we'll probably repeat some of the same problems we have with it. But the announcers run down the card for tonight, and they tell us that there's supposed to be a Hogan-Piper contract signing tonight. And the announcers tell us that Bischoff is trying to stall that contract signing, so we'll see if we get it tonight. But the first match, as is typical with these WCW pay-per-views, we open up with a cruiserweight match, and they're usually bangers, and this one is no exception. It is Rey Mysterio versus the Ultimate Dragon with Sonny Ono. For this match, supposedly Ultimate Dragon has put all of his titles on the line, so there's a lot at stake here.
Okay, spots I liked. Dragon definitely gets a nice scoopy, and I always like the way Dragon does the scoop slams. And of course, Dragon also hits a beautiful running powerbomb.
Yeah, it's a thunderous powerbomb, a beauty.
Yes.
Then we see Dragon do a Cesaro swing during the match, but they call it a Dragon swing, so if you think Cesaro made up that move, he did not.
No, and you'll see in 97, Jericho does it too for a while.
Yep. But Dragon continues putting on a clinic tonight. He does a brutal brainbuster that the crowd enjoyed as well, and he hits a jumping tombstone. He has beaten Rey Mysterio pillar to post
this
for a while.
This was a great match. It just shows, like, every single time Rey Mysterio would come at Dragon, he always had a counter ready. It was good storytelling.
I agree. Dragon continues whooping on Rey Mysterio. He hits a top rope hurricanrana, and then he hits that running powerbomb you're talking about. But Rey Mysterio just won't quit, and he kicks out at 2. And Rey is able to get some offense in, including an insane hurricanrana. He hits some of the best hurricanranas you ever see during this time.
I know.
But he gets that for a 2 count. I thought that was actually going to be the finish of the match, so I was kind of surprised. But later on, Rey Mysterio goes for his springboard hurricanrana, but Dragon catches him, and he throws him down with yet another powerbomb for the win.
I like the finish.
This was a fantastic match where Dragon had to use every move in his arsenal to put Rey Mysterio away. Like they always are, the Cruiserweight match is a great opener for the pay-per-view, and it would be hard for any match to be better than this one tonight.
And I'm going to tell you right now, there is not a match that's going to be better than this one.
No. I rated this match 4.25 out of 5.
The 4.5.
Fair. What did good old Dave Meltzer give it?
He gave it 4.5 as well.
All right. Fair deal. It's a fantastic match. Check it out. But after that match, we have a backstage interview with Diamond Dallas Page. He talks about Bischoff joining the NWO, and he says he doesn't care about Bischoff. He is focused on the World War III Battle Royal, and he says it wasn't long ago where he won the Battle Bowl, and tonight there will only be one. But now we go to our second match, which is Nick Patrick versus Chris Jericho with Teddy Long. Remember, Chris Jericho has to have one arm tied behind his back. And Nick Patrick comes out wearing shades and a boxing robe, and he's doing his damn best to look tough. I mean, he is hamming it up hard.
Yeah, he is.
Which is great. He's phenomenal at it. But for this show, we mentioned last week, for Nitro, they put the WWF theme song he had for him for some reason. But for this show, he's back to the WCW one, so we don't have to worry about that, so that's good. And, of course, Teddy Long and Nick Patrick argue before the match because those two just can't get along. Nick Patrick talks to the camera, and he says that Teddy Long should have come out with a towel because he's going to need it. He thinks he's going to put a beating on Jericho so bad that Long's going to have to throw in the towel. But as you expect, when the match starts, Jericho toys around with Nick Patrick for a while. He knocks Patrick out of the ring, and then Teddy Long and Nick Patrick argue some more. Patrick doesn't like being talked to while he's having a wrestling match, so he pushes Teddy Long, and Teddy Long pushes him right back. We don't get a DQ, though, thankfully. But eventually in the match, Nick Patrick is able to get in some offensive moves, but his offensive flurry doesn't last long, and Jericho wins with a super kick. I actually thought for this match, I had low expectations coming in, but I thought this match was better than what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I agree. It was better than what I thought. Nick Patrick played his role well.
Yeah, he had some hilarious facial reactions, and he oversold everything, but in this circumstance, it worked. This just shows you that not everything in wrestling has to be serious, and this was a perfect example of that. And even though he wasn't a wrestler, Nick Patrick was not terrible here at all. I actually gave this match a 2.25 out of 5.
I gave it 1.5. Dave gave it 1.25.
1.25?
So he liked it at least.
He doesn't like fun. But after this, we move on to a ramp interview with Ric Flair. Ric Flair talks about WCW taking back the company from the NWO. He runs down a list of names that represent WCW, but he doesn't mention Jarrett for some reason, who he has hyped up for weeks, strangely enough. But Flair promises that before it's all said and done, tonight the NWO will belong to the WCW. And it's even more odd that he didn't mention Jarrett, because Jarrett's in this next match. You would think he would hype him up. But we have a rematch here, and it is the Giant versus Jeff Jarrett.
I remember the first time they wrestled, Jarrett was like, "Oh, you can't chokeslam me," and Giant did it. So we'll see if he can get chokeslam this time.
Yep, and that match ended in a DQ, so we got a rematch here.
Return match, as they call it.
Yes. Jarrett starts off the match really hot, but the Giant shuts that shit down with a clothesline, and then he proceeds to dominate the match. And then the camera cuts to Sting, who we see walking around the rafters, and the crowd goes nuts when they notice him up there. But then we go back to the match, and we see the Giant hit a leg drop on Jarrett. Then we cut back to Sting, who we see leaving the rafters, and he is making his way to the ring as the match continues on. So while Sting's making his way down, we see Jarrett is able to get the Giant out of the ring, and this allows Sting to get into the ring, and he's not done with Jarrett. Remember a few weeks ago, he came into the ring during a Jarrett match, and he hit the Scorpion Death Drop on him. So guess what? He does that again. He grabs Jarrett from behind by his hair, and he hits the Scorpion Death Drop, which the ref missed trying to help the Giant. So that makes sense. I'm cool with that. Sting leaves, and then the Giant gets back into the ring, and he has a huge chokeslam on Jarrett for the win. So he did get the chokeslam on you, Jarrett.
He got it this time. 1 star for me.
1 star. I gave it a 2, but I think that was heavy lifting from Sting just because I like seeing him.
They gave it 1 1/4.
That's fine. I'm a little easier to please, I guess. But the match itself is nothing special. It went 6 minutes, so it didn't overstay its welcome. The pacing of the show's been fine so far. But after that match, we see Roddy Piper come out with a contract, and he grabs the mic, and he tells Hogan to come out so they can get this thing signed and done. The NWO music hits, but only Bischoff, Ted DiBiase, and Vincent come out. Bischoff tells him that Hollywood is a little busy looking at some scripts. I'm sure it's only the finest movies, top shelf movies here. He did say Francis Ford Coppola was talking to him the other week, so maybe he's looking at one of those. Bischoff says that Hogan gave him his power of attorney, and by the power invested in him, he would be happy to sign the contract as long as it meets all of the requirements. Piper calls Bischoff corrupt, and he says he doesn't care if the NWO is there during his match because he is going to be there for a fight, and the fight will end regardless of the NWO's involvement. Piper says he doesn't care if the NWO takes over WCW, but he doesn't like liars, he says, and he calls Hogan a coward again, and the NWO music hits once more, and out comes Hogan. And as Hogan is making his way out, a fan nailed Hogan right in the face with some trash, but Hogan, he doesn't sell that, so he eventually makes his way to the ring, and he grabs a mic, and he tells Piper that he is used to dealing with people that are his equal, and he wants everyone to realize right now that Piper was his equal 10 years ago, and Piper couldn't get the job done then, so he definitely ain't gonna get the job done now. Hogan asks Piper about his bad hip, and he lifts up Roddy's kilt, which is a little weird to see another man lift up another man's kilt, but I digress. But they show us a close-up of the scar from Roddy Piper's hip surgery. He did legitimately have surgery, so this is real. Hogan tells Piper that he doesn't usually pick on cripples, but since the whole world wants to see their war, he will sign the contract, and he does. And he cheekily tells Piper that he won't have a leg to stand on, and he has no problem beating up on a gimp. Piper doesn't like being called a gimp, so he punches Hogan, and the NWO rush into the ring, and they grab Piper, allowing Hogan to get some shots in. Piper is able to weasel his way out of the grasp, and then he eventually is able to get a few shots in on Hogan, but then the NWO numbers game takes advantage again, and they once again expose Piper's bad hip, and they hold him down while Hogan repeatedly hits Piper's repaired hip with a chair, and then he sprays NWO on it, and then Hogan grabs the mic and he says he's going to break Piper in half, and then he spits on him. And then the crowd boos as this is going on, the NWO members celebrate, and then they leave. And as they are leaving, Piper grabs a mic and he tells them that if that's the best shot they got, then they are in trouble.
I did like that. I was like, man, Piper ain't going down easy. He's showing that even though I may be severely hurt or hampered by this hip, I'm still going to kick your ass, or at least threaten to.
But this was a good segment. The match is official now, so that's good. It's going to be for the next month's pay-per-view. And this angle gave the NWO some good heat for that match. So I think the build-up for this is actually going pretty well so far.
I agree.
But then we move on to our next match, and this is the Amazing French Canadians with Colonel Parker versus Harlem Heat with Sister Sherry. Remember, whichever team wins, the manager of that team gets 5 minutes with the other one, and that match will happen immediately after this match. During this match, there is a ref bump. Ouellette then gets Booker T out of the ring. And then the Amazing French Canadians hit a double team pile driver on Stevie Ray. And then they bring in a table into the ring and both of the ring steps. They're setting up this huge spot. And this is to set up an even higher version of their tag team finishing move. It's kind of a spectacle to see them attempt to do this too.
It was interesting. Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. Piqued my interest a little bit.
But after all that work setting this up, we see Ouellette miss because Stevie Ray got out of the way. So Booker T then gets up and he hits the Harlem Hangover onto Ouellette for the win. And we see Sister Sherry have a huge smile on her face because she gets 5 minutes with Colonel Parker here. One thing with the stipulation, though, is that it sets up a match immediately after that. The rules never stipulated that the other person can't defend themselves. So either way, they were going to have a match with the other one.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing.
That doesn't really make any sense, but we do immediately go into Sister Sherry versus Colonel Parker. Sherry decks Colonel Parker and hits him with a clothesline a couple of times, and then she goes to the top rope, and she actually hits Parker with a splash, and she goes for the pin, but Parker is able to kick out, and then the French Canadians come in to help Colonel Parker to the back, and Sherry chases after them, and I guess that's it. This didn't even last 5 minutes.
Technically, Sherry Martel won by count out from what I'm reading, but...
Yeah. A waste of a stipulation. They didn't deliver. I mean, why even mention the 5 minutes if you're not going to even do 5 minutes? It maybe lasted a minute and a half, 2 minutes, maybe.
Yep.
So that's definitely a down for this show. This tag match and then this match afterwards were kind of a waste of time. One good thing about it, though, is that this should essentially end the Sherry versus Parker thing. So now the Harlem Heat can move on to something more interesting.
You would think. Hopefully.
After that fiasco, we go to a backstage interview with Lex Luger. Luger says he doesn't know what to make of the bat that Sting gave him last week, but he says it reeks of the NWO, but he doesn't want to believe Sting would do something like that. But Luger continues on saying that he has waited for months to talk to Sting, but Sting is a man of no words these days, so he doesn't know what to make of it. Gene then moves on to talking about the Battle Royal main event tonight, and he tells Luger that he is one of the favorites for tonight. And Luger agrees. He says this is a chance to restore honor to the WCW, and he says he wants a title match with Hogan really, really badly to restore honor to the WCW, and that's essentially it. But then we move on to our fifth match, and it is Psychosis versus Dean Malenko for the Cruiserweight title.
Dean hits a certified scoop on Psychosis. And then there is an unfortunate botch where Psychosis, he goes top rope, tries to dive onto Malenko, but his foot slips and he eats it. And so Malenko has to sell like he got out of the way. And there is also a jumping plancha or like Frankensteiner that Psychosis does on Dean Malenko. It's really sweet. Psychosis is criminally underrated.
Yeah, we see him hit like a nice pump handle backbreaker on the outside, a corkscrew dive. Yeah, he's hitting a whole bunch of stuff in this match. Near the end, we get multiple reversals of a tombstone spot. Malenko wins the reversing battle there, and he lands a tombstone for the 2 count. Again, not a huge fan of seeing smaller people do a tombstone, but it is what it is. But Malenko is able to retain the Cruiserweight title. He wins the match with a pinning reversal. But this match took 14 minutes and 33 seconds. But I thought it was a good technical showcase for Dean Malenko in particular. He dominated the majority of the match. And Psychosis has some nice spots. And this is kind of the most attention he's gotten in WCW at this point for Psychosis. So we haven't really had a chance to see him work a big match like this. And I thought he did well. What was your rating for this one?
I get 2.5. Again, this one started off slow, and a lot of it involved Malenko being on offense. So while it was technically really good, I don't know, my expectations were already heightened after the Dragon Mysterio match, and this just didn't live up to it.
No, not at all. I give it 2.5 as well.
They give it 2 3/4.
Yeah, that's about what this match is. But, I mean, it's fine. Dean Malenko retains. I think that was the right move. They haven't pushed Psychosis enough yet for him to be the champion. But then we'll move on to the 6th match of the night, and it is the Outsiders versus the Nasty Boys versus the Faces of Fear in a triangle WCW tag team title match.
I really wish this was just Faces of Fear versus Hall and Nash.
I agree. So the Outsiders come out first, and then after that it's the Nasty Boys, and they run into the ring, and they start this fight before the Faces of Fear even come out. They clear the ring of the Outsiders. So then the Faces of Fear come out to join the fun, and they start brawling with the Outsiders outside of the ring, and then the Nasty Boys join them. So the two teams are beating up on the Outsiders. And the match eventually starts, but the majority of the beginning portions of the match are mostly brawling between the Faces of Fear and the Nasty Boys. And the Outsiders are smart. They are enjoying themselves while they watch the other two teams beat up on each other. Smart strategy there. But the Outsiders do eventually get back into the match, and chaos starts as all 6 men start going after each other. We do get a moment where the Outsiders are both tagged into the match, but the Outsiders, again, they're not dumb. So Nash immediately lays down and Hall goes for the cover. So then the other teams come in.
I do like it that the wrestlers aren't dumb enough to actually fight, you know.
Yeah, and then the match descends into further chaos. Jimmy Hart gets involved as well. He hops into the apron. Knobbs decks him, and as this is going on, Scott Hall hits Knobbs with Jimmy Hart's megaphone, and Kevin Nash hits the jackknife for the win, and a big roar from the crowd. They definitely wanted the Outsiders to win this match.
Yeah.
This match took 16 minutes and 11 seconds. I think this was a bit long for this kind of match because, again, most of it was really just brawling.
Yeah, it was long.
But it was a relentless brawl with some stiff shots. All of the teams here sold their hatred well. So the character work was good. And while a match may have been a little long, the crowd was clearly into it. So I was fine with this match. Right winner. I gave this match a 2.5.
I gave it 1.5. I did not really care for it much. Meltzer really
feeling...
hated it. Half a star.
Half a star?
Half a
Man,
star.
we all over the place on this one. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm being a bit generous with this one, but I'm fine with it. At the time, I enjoyed it. But after that match, we get ready for the World War III Battle Royal. This is the main event of the show. And of course, the winner of this match gets the next title shot against Hogan. The only bad thing with this, though, is that we know that Piper vs. Hogan is next. And that match is non-title.
Yeah, they don't say when this title match will take place.
Mm-hmm. So including this pay-per-view, this will make 2 straight pay-per-views with no WCW title match. So I don't like that. But now, yes, we are on to finally the World War III Battle Royal. We go to the 3-ring setup, and it's just really hard to follow the action while they do this. The wrestlers look so small, you can't really tell who's who. And especially, again, during the 90s when this took place, the TVs weren't that big. You're talking 32 was like considered big back then. You're not going to be able to see nothing. But Benoit, when he comes out, he has like bruises all over his face. I'm not quite sure when that happened.
Kevin Sullivan kicked his ass, I don't know.
Maybe. But yeah, the Dungeon of Doom and Benoit brawl, and then they kind of are out of here. We also have another dumb spot during this match where wrestlers in Ring 1 beat down Ron Studd, and then they dogpile him as if they are pinning him. But of course, there's no pins in this match. So what the hell was that about?
I don't know. Dusty does call him John Studd.
John Studd's the bigger name, so I can see it. What was
funny.
ridiculous, even after that pin attempt on Ron Studd, they didn't even eliminate him after that. I don't understand that. But some notable eliminations that we see are Marcus Bagwell eliminates Scotty Riggs. We're continuing that beef between them. But right after Bagwell eliminates Riggs, Bagwell is eliminated, and then the 2 men kind of just out there arguing with each other as they head to the back. So there's just more trouble brewing there. And then we eventually get to the final 10 men. And we have sort of a Team WCW versus Team WO thing going on, as we have Lex Luger, Steven Regal, Jeff Jarrett, Eddie Guerrero, and Rey Mysterio versus Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Syxx, The Giant, and then a potential NWO member they've been teasing, Diamond Dallas Page. So those are the 10 men left. We see Regal eliminate Eddie Guerrero, and then the Giant picks up Rey with one hand and throws him out. Very impressive. Very easy for him at the time, too, I bet. And then we see, I'll just get through some of these eliminations. Nash eliminates Jeff Jarrett. DDP misses a dive, and Regal eliminates Diamond Dallas Page. That's a pretty big elimination for Regal. The Outsiders then eliminate Steven Regal, and now we are down to Lex Luger versus Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, The Giant, and Syxx. So things are not looking very good for Lex Luger. The NWO members are beating up on Lex Luger. Scott Hall tries to get Lex Luger in the Outsider's edge, but Luger flips Hall out of the ring, and then he military presses Syxx out of the ring. And this has all kind of happened quickly in succession here. Luger then gets Kevin Nash in the torture rack, but the Giant shoves Luger while he's holding Nash and Luger fall out of the ring. So the Giant is the winner as the crowd boos. And then the NWO members come into the ring and celebrate with the Giant as we close out the show. I kind of was a little bit bummed that the Giant was the winner. I thought Luger should have won. I mean, but that was the obvious choice. So I think WCW was like, okay, everyone expects Luger to win, so we're going to have someone else win. But this was interesting still, though, because Giant is in the NWO now. So now he's going to face NWO leader Hogan for the title. So we'll see how that develops. But they have not announced when that's going to happen yet. So we're just kind of waiting to see when they're going to bring this back up. But for this match, it took 28 minutes and 21 seconds. Again, these matches are super hard to follow with the 3-screen setup. It's a harsh viewing experience, and you're just kind of waiting for it to get to the final 10 so everyone can be in the same ring and you can actually see what's going on. But I thought
half a star.
Oh, you gave it half a star? I gave it 1.5.
Nope, did not care for it. David grew with me half a star.
I was in a good mood then, but I mean, 1.5 is low. But overall for the show, the beginning was the best part. That match is by far the best match on this card. We had a lot of subpar matches, especially when it's you and Dave rating it. Y'all rated a couple of matches below a 2 and sometimes below a 1. So not the best card here. No. It's not as bad as Uncensored was in March. No, it's not that bad. They had been having some good pay-per-views recently with Halloween Havoc and Fall Brawl. Those are 2 good shows back-to-back. But this one was a dud, a bit of a letdown. So overall for the show, I gave it 5.5 out of 10.
I didn't rate it, but yeah, 5. There was only one match, honestly. Well, 2 matches worth watching. 2 matches.
So that is that for this month. It's clear as day. WWF had the much better pay-per-view. Survivor Series, that's going to be a tough one to follow anyway. But they didn't even try. Survivor Series whooped this one.
They threw in the towel.
So yeah, that's that. We'll see how WCW follows this up tomorrow night on Nitro.